Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. The feature race at the fairgrounds on Saturday, a very, very important Kentucky Derby prep. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 2 $1 million Louisiana Derby. We're going a mile and an eighth. We've got a big field, and Matt, the #1 Bravazzo for Wayne Lukas, just won the local prep. The Grade 2 Risen Star Stakes beat 3 of these common foes that day. What'd you think of the Risen Star as a whole?
I have to be honest with you, Dan. I still don't know what I think of that race, just simply because it was run in kind of an odd fashion where no one really did any running. The pace held up. It's not like they were going that fast, but they also weren't crawling out there, and there was no running going on from the back of the pack. So I don't know if I want to look at it and say the form was accurate and what you saw was really what it was, or was there something a little bit quirky about the racetrack in the Risen Star? However you want to chop it up. Bravazzo has certainly taken a step forward from his 2-year-old year to his 3-year-old year here for Lukas. He has co-highest last out buyer in the field with a 93. I think it's fascinating to see that he was that close to the pace last time out, and I'm going to be very interested to see where Gary Stevens positioned him this time around.
He is tactical. You can put him on the lead. You can sit him off the pace. He has a nice inside post position. You're right about how that Risen Star was a weirdly run race. Not a lot of closing. Timeform U.S. color-coded portions of that pace blue, indicating a slow pace. Perhaps Bravazzo was helped by it. Perhaps Noble Indy, the #2, was helped by it. He was sort of close to that pace as well. Noble Indy's going to get blinkers for the first time for trainer Todd Pletcher, and you're not a big fan of that move.
Well, look, I fell into the trap last week with Vino Rosso, or 2 weeks ago, where this is just not something that Todd normally does. And it doesn't mean that it's a universal just pitch, but at the same time, past 5 years, dirt, first time blinkers in a stakes race, he's 1 for 18 with a 57-cent ROI. And I think part of it is because it just always feels like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, if you're making a move to change, is there something that you just don't think that he's getting over the hump? He's still so lightly raced. He's taken steps forward buyer-wise in each of his 3 starts. He makes a lot of sense here in a race like this, where if you don't really trust anyone else, why wouldn't you trust Pletcher with a nicely bred horse that looks like he wants to run all day? To me, it's enough of an unknown to turn me off.
I think he got an education in that Risen Star because he was sort of buried in the pocket throughout, down inside, getting dirt kicked in his face. There was a tight spot down on the inside. Maybe he was a bit uncomfortable, didn't want to go through. Hopefully the blinkers will give him a little bit more focus, and the 2 horses ahead of him perhaps were benefiting from that slow pace up front. I think he deserves another chance. The question is price. He's 7-2 on the morning line. That seems fair, but it is Todd Pletcher and John Velasquez. Marmello is the 3. We know this horse has a good amount of early speed. The Timeform U.S. pace projector has them out there on the lead. The problem for Marmello is he's still a maiden.
Still a maiden. He's in very, very tough here, putting that kindly. Now, look, he would appreciate a racetrack or a race similar to what we saw in the Risen Star, where if for some reason the pace just stays on, he could be in a very good position. I don't think he's quite good enough, and this is a lot to throw at him in a short amount of time.
Give me a minute. I was a fan of his as a 2-year-old, and maybe he just hasn't panned out, or maybe in the Risen Star there was just no pace for him to run at because he was at the back of the pack, and again, there was no running from the back of the pack. His race before that, hard to really judge. He was 1-20 against fellow Louisiana breds. My feeling is a fast pace works to his advantage, but I kind of like him as a late running sprinter more than a true mile and an eighth horse.
Yeah, I feel like everything we said about him prior to the Risen Star sticks, where, you know what, his 1-turn races are markedly better at this point in his career than his 2-turn races. Until he proves to me that the 2 turns is not an issue, I'm going to sit back.
I think the 5 Retirement Fund's a real interesting horse in this race. The son of Escandrea, who went gate to wire in his first 2 starts at the fairgrounds. They shipped him to Oaklawn for the Southwest. He caught a wet track, and he might have caught a track where the rail was good and he was chasing outside, and he didn't make the lead. A lot of things went against Retirement Fund last time out. If you just want to draw a line through that race, the question I have for you is his prior 2 races good enough to win?
Well, at least it gives you the inkling or the indication that he could take a step forward. The 81 and the 80 buyers, it would make me think that 3rd start he would have gotten close to that high 80, low 90 sort of figure. And if it's a combination of the racetrack at Oaklawn that day, where he was positioned, wet racing surface, a lot thrown at him in a short amount of time, if you just strip that from the PPs and think that he can take that step forward on a fast track to a low 90, then look, he's very, very interesting at what should be a square number.
I wonder if Pletcher didn't have a lot of faith in the number 6 Hindford. This was a $200,000 yearling who he dropped in for 52 starts back, and he just won by a half length in that maiden claimer. Last time out, no excuses other than the horse that beat him, Magnum Moon's a much better horse. Magnum Moon came back to win the Rebel with a 97 Beyer speed figure. I think the original plan for Hindford was to run in the Sunland Derby on Sunday, but he was going to be on the outside looking in terms of being also eligible. So Todd is here with a horse that can be forward.
Yeah, you know what? There's something to what you had brought up, to me anyway, that when Todd or any of these big outfits, a Bob Baffert, a Chad Brown, when they're willing to dump a horse in for a tag that they paid $200,000 for a few years back, to me, that's just immediately a red flag. I understand he ran okay in that most recent run at Tampa. No match for Magnum Moon, but I think Hinford's going to need to do much better.
You know, I'm a big fan of the 7 Snapper Sinclair. Thought he ran great in the Lecomte behind Instilled Regard. Expected a good performance out of him in the Risen Star. He did get a good, give a good effort despite being up close to that slow pace. I mean, it probably helped him out. I'm a little worried as this distance increases. I'm worried about 1 1/8 miles. I'm worried about a faster pace against perhaps sharper horses.
Yeah, you know, I agree with all that, and it's kind of one of those things. I look at that most recent run in that Risen Star at 8.5 and say, if he couldn't beat Bravazzo that day, I can't imagine him with this extra 16th of a mile getting the job done. I think he's very, very talented. He reminds me a little bit of a horse like Untrapped. I still think he's probably better, a little bit shorter. Maybe he's more talented than Untrapped is, but I agree with you. I kind of feel like mile, maybe one turn, Pate mile kind of horse.
A couple horses coming out of an entry-level optional claimer at the fairgrounds on February the 19th. We'll get to the winner of that race, Dark Templar, in a bit. Lone Sailor was trying to come from last. And again, if you look at the Timeform US past performances, some portions of that race, the fractions color-coded blue could have worked against a closer like Lone Sailor, but he was making up a little bit of late ground, and it's now his 3rd start back for a sharp trainer.
Yeah, Tom Amos goes out there. It seems like everything he sends out down in Louisiana, they usually run. The big problem with this horse, I mean, there's no real other way to put it. He's slow. He's very slow on paper. The top contenders in here are low to mid-90s. He is yet to clip 80 on the Beyer speed figure scale. You need to hope that the additional distance and the pace heats up for this horse to have any chance.
But he was grade 1 place last year at a big price, outrunning his odds in the Breeders' Futurity. My Boy Jack, the number 9, 5-2 morning line favorite. No match for McKinsey, 2 back in the Sham. We won't hold that race against him after what we've seen McKinsey do since. Last time out in the Southwest, Kent DeZormo just gave him a great ride and a perfect trip up the rail. 93 Beyer. Was it the mud? Was it the trip? Was it the pace scenario? Was it the combination of all three? Or are you going to look at it from a different point of view and saying, My Boy Jack has found himself and has found a great spot?
You know, there's a couple things here with this horse. I think all of those things that you had laid out about the run at Oaklawn are accurate. Great ride, the track, the rail, the whole 9 yards. But at the same time, I've always thought that My Boy Jack's a nice horse. And I wonder if this is just an instance where he found the right spot here in the Louisiana Derby. Having said all that, I still think he's a better turf horse. I loved him as a 2-year-old. I think he ran arguably one of the best races in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, considering the kind of trip that he had. He was impossibly wide throughout. I think this is a really nice horse, and if they ever choose to go back to the turf with him, I think he could be a serious runner.
Dark Templar completes the field. He wired Lone Sailor last time out, but he might have really benefited from a nice, easy pace. Tough outside post. Hard to imagine him completely clearing off and getting the front with so many other fast horses to his inside.
Yeah, Florent Giroux is going to be in a pretty tough position here, breaking from the outside. Going to have to decide, do I want to use early to try to get position, or am I going to be content trying to take back and make a run?
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Grade 2 $1 million Louisiana Derby. I like you're going for the big bomb. The 8, Lone Sailor, 20-1. He's going to get some pace for a big trainer.
Yeah, and I also wonder, too, just maybe the distance is going to be sort of the great equalizer. I think 9 furlongs is going to work for him. That most recent run, non-winners and one other than, I thought it was much better than it looks on paper. You brought up there wasn't a ton of pace, and he made a serious run, serious bid behind Dark Templar. I think he's a nice horse. You brought up he was grade 1 place as a 2-year-old. I'm hopeful for just some sort of a pace meltdown, and frankly, just making it clear, it's because I don't really love anybody else in this race.
I'm hoping that Noble Indy got that education last time out, being in and among horses. Now the blinkers will get him to focus. This is only start number 4. His buyer speed figures have moved up with each and every start. Maybe we won't get a great price, although I think the 7-2 or 4-1 seems about fair. I'll go 2-9-7-1 in the Louisiana Derby. It's race number 11 at the fairgrounds on Saturday. It has an approximate post time of 5:21 Central. Best of luck.